Gateway Community Services was overbilling Medicaid by a huge amount. Gateway's CEO, Abdullahi Ali, was in 2024 running for president of Jubaland and admitting on Kenyan television multiple times that he is using money that he raised in the US to fund a militia that he wants to use to forcefully topple the incumbent president Madobe in Jubaland. We're looking about $5 million per year in Medicaid billing. Aaron Fry, the Attorney General, who sits on in charge of the opioid settlement money, awards Gateway $400,000 through their nonprofit arm. He can't say warlord. His attorneys say that's racist. Huh? I said wannabe warlord. And you look at the things that they're finding with Gateway, and you immediately say, oh, okay, so they're just making this up. They're billing for services that they haven't provided and they can't document. And so we get curious about this because we have this leaked notice of violation and we want to know what's happening. Obviously, the Mills administration won't answer any questions about it. They won't tell us, what was the resolution of this? Did you finally figure out that they owed this money? Did they pay it back? How did they pay it back? Did they pay it back through a lump sum, or did they pay it back through set-asides? This is a great thing that we allow. Is if you're a organization running a Medicaid fraud in Maine and you get caught defrauding the state government, they'll allow you to pay it back through set-asides. So rather than just giving the money back, you pay it back through a 5 or a 10% haircut on your future claims. So we're going to let you pay back last year's fraud by a slight deduction on next year's fraud. That's allowed in the state under the premise that we're assuming like all these organizations are legitimate. We have to just assume that all these organizations are legitimate. We have to bend over backwards to give them the benefit of the doubt. But that's where our investigation starts, is with this DHHS audit that shows Gateway Community Services was overbilling Medicaid by a huge amount. They're a politically connected firm, and they've got immense ties to the Mills administration, to Maine Democrats. And
How are they tied?
Well, we've got pictures of the CEO is Abdullahi Ali, who is he's an interesting figure, as we'll get into, but he's been at political events. We have photographs of him with all kinds of political figures like Governor Mills, Secretary of State Shawn Bellows. Former employees have gone on to be state lawmakers, as we just talked about. Decca Delac and Yusuf. Ekhlas Ahmed is now in the Mills administration. But the closest tie really is with the Secretary of State, Shawn Bellows, in a group that Gateway Community Services formed called the Community Organizing Alliance, which was an explicitly political group that had a fiscal sponsorship from the Maine People's Alliance, which is your typical Soros-funded, dark money, left-wing push group, paid protesters, paid activists, paid door knockers, that kind of thing. But this their political connections get to the heart of the fraud scheme in Maine because it was very much a political scheme. People ask, do you see Somalis who are making money from home healthcare agencies or from Gateway turning around and donating money to the politicians? And it works a little bit differently than that. They're donating boots on the ground and votes. And
I was just going to say that they really don't have to, because if they're taking over the population, then that's it. You just have to appease them and they will always vote for you.
And you think,
just like anybody else,
you think that it has to be much bigger than the population of voters has to be much bigger than it really does in order to get to the tipping point. Because if you look right now in Maine, where we have a Democratic primary for governor, for the 2nd Congressional District, and for governor, there's a huge Somali vote in each of those races, and almost entirely, 95% of those people will be Democrat primary voters. So if you're running in a competitive Democrat primary, your number one goal, perhaps the single most determinative factor in those primary elections, will be who the Somali bloc votes for. Because they're going to vote in unison. They're going to vote according to what the community leaders or the gatekeepers say. And they're going to vote for who's best for their economic interests. They're not going to vote for someone who takes a hard line on fraud. Mm-hmm. They're not going to vote for someone who wants Gateway investigated. So the incentives in the Democrat primary right now are to downplay the investigation, to stand with the very people who are defrauding these programs, as opposed to what's in the best interest of Mainers. So the incentive structure is set up for the Democrat primary to nominate the person who represents the Somali interests as opposed to the interests of even moderate Democrats. So you just have to get to be a significant block of voters within the Democratic primary, and then you have incredible control. Because if you're the one who picks the nominee of the Democratic Party, and then it's even a coin flip that the Democrat wins the gubernatorial election, becomes the AG, wins a congressional election, then they know who buttered their bread. They know who to take care of.
Wow.
And that's what we've seen in the Mills administration, is that at a minimum, you can say they turned a blind eye, they swept these audits under the rug, and they did not publicize them in the way that these investigations should have been publicized. They should have been handled. Like nobody would know that this was happening at Gateway if we hadn't gotten those notices of violation and publicized them. Just this week, Governor Mills comes out and says, I support an investigation into Gateway. None of that would have happened. She wouldn't have admitted it. The records would have never been produced by the people doing the audits, by people who know what's going on. None of it would have happened if we didn't claw it out of the establishment's hands and bring it into the light of day.
Before it's great. They're going to investigate him. Do you think it will be a legitimate investigation, or will this be? Is this a publicity stunt?
For Governor Mills, it's a publicity stunt. Yes.
So you don't think there will be a legitimate investigation?
I think there will be. I think that the U.S. Attorney Andrew Benson will conduct a legitimate investigation. I think he's Trump's nominee for U.S. Attorney. He's been a judge for a LePage appointee. LePage appointee. I think that he's a man of integrity and will do a legitimate investigation there. The House Oversight Committee will do a legitimate investigation there, and they can bring in people for transcripted interviews. They can bring people down to Washington, D.C. for interviews under oath. There will be an investigation, just not at the state level.
Okay.
Maine is too far compromised
to
have a legitimate investigation. I mean, imagine this. So
that's what I was getting at. I did not realize it was federal.
Yeah. So, but it's only because we were able to shake loose the secrets of the welfare department that they even know there's something to investigate here. But as a sign of just how far gone things are in Maine, last summer, Attorney General Aaron Fry, who's like a nobody lawyer from Bangor, never really done anything or had a successful business, becomes AG under Mills because he's going to be loyal to her and is going to do what the governor wants, as opposed to having an adversarial system. He's going to do what the governor wants. We've reported now on the overbilling at Gateway, on the fact that Gateway's CEO, Abdullahi Ali, was in 2024 running for president of Jubaland and admitting on Kenyan television multiple times that he is using money that he raised in the U.S. to fund a militia that he wants to use to forcefully topple the incumbent president, Madobe, in Jubaland. So he's a...
Holy shit.
So he's a
warlord.
You can't say warlord. His attorneys say that's racist. Huh? I said wannabe warlord. They said in the letter that was a racially tinged phrase. But I mean, he was like bragging about using the militia he funded to topple the incumbent president. It feels warlordy. Feels like warlords in play. But so
how much money has this Gateway community? What are we looking at?
Purely on the Medicaid side through Gateway Community Services LLC, we're looking about $5 million per year in Medicaid billing and Medicaid billing. That's what they've billed according to state spending records that we've obtained. In addition to that, they got another over $1 million in no-bid contracts handed to them from the Mills administration, which are a very interesting part of this story and get to, I think, part of the reason why Gateway was allowed to continue to exist and operate the way they were operating. But just to close the loop on the Jubaland stuff. So he's running for president in Jubaland, all this money, the fraud accusations. We've reported all this. This is all on the record. Like, the whistleblower has come forward and said, I was there for 5.5 years. Here's my name. I reported this to the state auditor and never heard back. I reported this to the Department of Homeland Security under Biden and never heard back. That was a year before I met the guy. And so all that's out in the public record. And in the summer of last year, Aaron Fry, the Attorney General, who sits on in charge of the opioid settlement money, awards Gateway $400,000 through their nonprofit arm. So this is a group that's been credibly accused of running a systemic Medicaid fraud, and we know that the head of the group is, trying to be a warlord in Somalia, and the Attorney General gives them $400,000 in money that they claim is going to be used for boofing kits, essentially.
Oh.
It's like boofing kit money is what he sends to them. And, these guys, they're so bad, they're probably not even buying boofing kits.
Is that why they're all out of boofing kits up there in Maine?
It could be because they smuggled all the money to Somalia.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So that's who would be investigating Gateway. And he declined to investigate them when the initial allegations came out. Instead, he gives them $400,000. So now the governor comes out and says, I support an investigation. Well, I support the New England Patriots. Great. It's got about the same effect on reality.
Yeah.
It's just pure political posturing. Nothing happens at the state level. These people are going to have to be dragged kicking and screaming to see reality and have reality imposed upon them. And I think that the Trump Justice Department will do that. For some of the most egregious ones, yes, they will do it. But the fraud is so widespread and decentralized and diverse that we just do not have a Justice Department that can handle it. Even if you put every single fact on record and you lined up every single defendant, all the fraudsters, you lined them up and put all the facts right out there in public, which would be, that's circumventing an enormous amount of investigative effort that is required to do that. You still don't have the energy to take all those cases, to process all those criminal cases, to deal with the defense attorney and the prosecution going back and forth. We just don't have the attorneys. Like physically, the people in those jobs with the man hours to prosecute these cases, we don't have it. That's how big the fraud is. And it's not just me saying that, it's people, high-level people I've talked with in the Trump White House have said that that's the problem that they're dealing with. That the amount of fraud is so staggeringly large, we just can't deal with it with the mechanisms that we have in place to deal with it, like we have dealt with the benefits fraud in the past. So you're going to have to come up with things like ending the temporary protected status for Somalis. You're going to have to cut off the money.
Do you think that's a legitimate excuse?
I do, from what I've seen.
Absolutely. Shouldn't even tackle any of it?
No, you do.
All of it?
You do. I don't think it's an excuse for inaction. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it's a motivation to think creatively and come up with an asymmetric response.
Okay.
I think that you need to, the first thing I would do is, one, every single governor in the state, they can cut off billing to any Medicaid provider if there's been a credible accusation of fraud. They don't need charges. They don't need an audit. They don't need, like a criminal finding. They don't need arrest. They don't need any of that. All they need is a credible accusation. That can be an email that comes in and says, I think Shawn's sketchy. Stop paying him Medicaid money. The governor can say, all right, we're going to stop and we're going to investigate and see what's going on here. So like right now here, I'm making a credible allegation. It's all fraudulent. Every single state should stop billing to every Medicaid provider and force them to re-enroll. Just force them to come and prove that they're legitimate. Every hospital and doctor's office in America can do this in 24 or 48 hours. They can come to the Department of Health and Human Services and say, yeah, we're legitimate. But these, shady fly-by-night home healthcare agencies that have popped up, 3 years ago and suddenly they're billing $1 million, they won't be able to do this. They won't want to do this because they'll think that there's criminal liability. They don't want to show their face around the health office or anywhere where there might be some accountability. So they're just going to say, nope, we're going away. That's going to end the funding. So you turn off the money that's flowing into these organizations without any kind of having to go through the investigation or the criminal process. But also, if you're sending $500,000, $1 million, $5 million to this home healthcare agency and you stop dead, and then they never say anything, that's a pretty good clue, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's a pretty good clue about what's happening. Mm-hmm. And you never hear from patients saying, oh, my healthcare has been cut off. My vital healthcare services that I rely on has been cut off. It's a pretty good clue as to what's happening. And that allows you to further investigate. Only the ones who are legitimate are going to come back in and go through this re-enrollment process. And that could happen now under existing law. Every governor could force these people to re-enroll through a more legitimate process. They just have to exercise their power to do it.
And if you say they can only, I think, I'm just going to play devil's advocate. I shouldn't say I think. that the hesitation could be maybe that, that, and I could understand this if they cut one off and somebody dies, a condition gets worse, they would probably be held liable, maybe.
I mean,
No?
how many people are dying as a result of the stolen benefits that could be spent better? How many people are dying?
Tons.
Yeah, how many people are dying of the economic desperation in my state?
Tons.
Because they're being
Sure,
looted
there's tons.
so that Medicaid pirates can go run for office in Somalia.
Don't get me wrong.
I'm not
legitimizing
I'm playing devil's
bullshit
advocate to your
excuses.
devil's advocate. Yeah, but we're not talking about.
But 24
life-
hours. I mean, if they can,
we're not
produce
talking about
documents in
life-saving-
24 hours.
We're not talking about life-saving healthcare. We're talking about ass wiping. This is what these home healthcare agencies do.
It's transportation, translation.
Exactly. This is
gaslighting.
transportation, translation, home healthcare agencies, SNAP benefits at the halal markets. We're not talking about life-saving care. No one's going to shut off the Medicaid reimbursement for cardiac surgeons.
Gotcha.
Anyone involved in life-saving care is going to be a big enough organization so that a temporary stop in Medicaid billing is not going to cripple the organization. They're going to be able to re-enroll very quickly. And you could even, honestly, if you wanted to, you could say, okay, we're not going to do hospitals. Because the hospitals, there's a lot of funny business in American hospitals, but they're not the ones submitting completely bogus claims. So no one is going to die. To the extent that there are actual patients at these home healthcare agencies, they're the family of the person listed as the CEO of the home healthcare agency. They're allowed to do that. You can start a home healthcare agency. And the home healthcare agency, the employees of a home healthcare agency go to your home and they assist you with the tasks of daily living, which is groceries, shower, cleaning your kitchen, wiping your butt. And you can start a home healthcare agency. You can hire your family, your cousins, and they can also be patients of your home healthcare agency. So your home healthcare agency can be just a total family operation with Medicaid money flowing in both as a benefit to your family members, but also as the money that pays your family members. We see this in the notices of violation, where the investigators, to the extent that they're trying to figure out what's happened at some of these home healthcare agencies, say like, oh, well, was this person receiving services from, insert home healthcare agency at the same time that they were being paid to provide these services? So it's even the stuff that follows the rules looks fraudulent from an outside perspective, because these programs are almost designed to be exploited and defrauded. But I don't think anyone's going to die if you turn off the billing. No one's
Doesn't sound like it.
There will be, and there's a good example.
I have to look for a legitimate excuse on why they. I'm just trying to think like
Janet Mills did it to
something
Gateway.
legitimate.
Janet Mills did it to Gateway, by the way. She turned off the billing finally.
She did?
Yes. This was 9 to 10 months after we'd reported on it. The national media firestorm kicks up, and she just says, it gets to 1.6 million is the amount that they've been. HHS alleges that they've overbilled according to their arcane audit process, which is a drastic underestimate of what actually happened. But she's shut off their billing. So this is a mechanism that works. This is not controversial. It's a way to protect the integrity of the Medicaid system. All you need is an allegation, and you can shut off billing. And so make the allegations, folks. Go out there and make the allegations. And governors, too, can use that in red states. This fraud's happening there, too. You can use this authority very brazenly, I would say, to combat the problem. But to your original point about how you deal with it, or the scope of the fraud, how we prosecute people, it's such a massive problem and so decentralized, you're going to have to think asymmetrically. And I think the more you investigate this as a journalist, or the more the law enforcement investigates this, you find more and more these connections to political actors in Somalia or Central Africa. You find more and more that there are high-level political figures in Somalia who are benefiting from this scheme on the money transmission side, they have their own daycares or healthcare businesses in Minnesota or in Maine. And you can't help but view this as a form of nation building for Somalia, but also economic terrorism against the middle class in Maine, in Minnesota. I think this is economic terrorism, and I think it needs to be treated that way. They are systematically defrauding the American taxpayer at the nation-state level in order to build out their country in Somalia. And it is economic terrorism. And the victims are the people who are dying of overdoses in Lewiston. The victims are the people who those benefits could have been spent on. The victims are the people in northern rural Maine, the working class people, guys I went to high school with who are seeing, half their paycheck go away in taxes so that Abdullahi Ali can drive a Mercedes and have an estate in Kenya while he's running for warlord of Jubaland. Like, those are the victims of the economic terrorism that the Medicaid fraud is wreaking. And once you start treating it like economic terrorism, it becomes a national security problem.
No matter where you're watching the Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this at all, anything, please like, comment, and subscribe. And most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, head to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and leave us a review.